Hey everyone, geophysicist Stefan Burns here. We have a big energy portal coming up on August 8th. This is traditionally known as the Lionsgate portal. And in fact, it's perfectly coinciding with this really legendary, honestly, historic planetary alignment that's unfolding at this moment in time. That we have a full moon on the 9th. This alignment goes exact on the 9th, but it's really active right now. We have Mars behind the Earth, then Saturn, Neptune, Pluto, and Uranus in a harmonic arrangement to the sides, and we also have an alignment with Venus and Jupiter unfolding. So basically every single planet is connected to this. Mercury will be in a magnetic connection to the Earth, in front of the Earth, just having finished its inferior conjunction, Mercury-Cazimi. Hello and welcome to August. This is where the sun is in exaltation. And so we are now seeing increased solar activity, though it's just at the very beginning of what I think is a larger wave, adding fuel to this larger fire. We see this increased solar activity very nicely here with this new flux pushing out of this sunspot group. And this is 4167, the newest sunspot group on the sun. And you'll notice that it is very, very active. So notice all that crackling, that electricity, just a lot of activity there, getting bigger, getting more complex. It's likely that we're going to see some solar flares from that, just based off of the trajectory of what we've seen thus far. So this is no longer on the central meridian. It is rotating off. It would have to do a big flare in about the next 24 hours for that to still be really Earth center direct. But if it doesn't do that, there's still plenty of opportunity for this to have big flares and trigger radio blackouts here on Earth because it is on the Earth facing side. And so if you get a big influx of highly vibrational light photons, this is extreme ultraviolet light, X-ray light, which is how we measure these sort of solar flares, that causes the properties of the ionosphere to change. And one of the most well-known consequences of that as it relates to us is that there is a radio blackout. And certain radio frequencies are degraded and certain radio communication channels are degraded. But when you're interacting with the ionosphere, you're also altering a lot of other Earth systems. So the ionosphere is one of the most important components of the global electric circuit. And what is a circuit? It is a flow of energy. And you don't have a flow of energy unless things are conductive all the way across. If you have a lot of resistivity, then that electric circuit is going to be limited by that weakest link. And so charging up the ionosphere in general increases the conductivity of the overall global electric circuit. And this is right now unfolding because primarily 4167 right here. But there are other sunspots, as you can tell, rotating into view. And there's in fact quite a large sunspot that is on the far side of the sun getting closer to appearing on the eastern limb. And so just in general, for the month of August, I think that we are going to see increased solar activity as compared to what we have been seeing. We had an absolute low in May. June was higher, and now the sunspot count for July is higher than that at over 120. So we have been seeing a rebound in some of these overall measures of solar activity. Solar flux has been increasing, but I think the biggest energy influence right now is this planetary alignment and how that may ultimately influence solar activity due to how it's altering the gravitational field, which of course the sun is the one controlling all of this, but how that's altering the gravitational field that the sun sits within, and therefore the flow of energy deeper within the solar surface, and therefore how this solar flux pushes out. But we are nowhere near the solar minimum. Some people think that, solar max is over. It's a process. It unfolds like the peak. We are kind of on this part now that we may see a double peak soon. And then we eventually enter into the descending phase. We'll definitely be descending phase 2027, but the rest of 2025, 2026 is very likely to be quite active, especially in comparison to solar minimum, where you have basically no sunspots for months at a time. So that is what we're going to cover in today's video. And then after that, we are going to do a Ching reading to get a sense of what this 8-8 portal means, just in general for the collective. And after that, we will also do a cosmic connection meditation with the singing bowl. And specifically, we will use the solar plexus crystal bowl here because we're talking about increased solar energy, 8-8 Lionsgate portal. It is the bowl to play. So that is the agenda for today. Hello, welcome everyone to the live stream. If you're new here, I'm your host, Stefan Burns. What we cover on this channel is what's happening with the Earth energetically, which means that we have to look at a whole bunch of different things accurately in order to stand the larger context. That's geologic activity like earthquakes. That's also weather activity. This is geophysical energies like the Schumann resonances. Then we have to zoom out. We look at solar activity, space weather, right? What's happening with the solar wind, geomagnetic storms. We're looking at what's happening with the planets, their alignments, planetary resonances, synodic cycles. We zoom even further out. Where are we in our interstellar and cosmic environment? How are those energies changing? Like, for example, nova events, supernovas. There's a lot. Metaphysics. All this is important. I do not claim to be an expert on any of these things, but I do consider myself a bit of a polymath and a Renaissance man. So we do our best to look at the comprehensive picture. I release videos almost daily doing that. If you like the sound of that, then please subscribe. The channel has been growing very fast because of all of you amazing, wonderful people here. Hello and welcome. So if you'd like to jump in before we hit that 500K marker, then I would recommend you do so. About 50% of you that watch are not subscribed, which is kind of mind-blowing to me. But regardless, I respect your decision, whatever it is. Happy to be here to support you with your quest to understand what's happening energetically, what the Earth is doing, and more. So yeah, our 131 angstrom view shows quite a lot of sunspots distributed across the disk. We do have a lot moving out right now, but we have new ones coming in, and 4167 there definitely is growing quickly. Let's give it a look with our intensitygram, and I'm hoping that we can load up our 2-day intensitygram so I can show you the growth of this, because it is quite remarkable. So here is our 2-day intensitygram, and I'll have to keep hitting it so it loops, but watch right there. Look at 4167, how quickly that appears, and look how significant that is getting too. It's popping out really fast. Also this group right there, 4166 I believe, but look at that. That is a significant sunspot now, and it's still building all these cores in between. That's kind of one of the key things to watch for as well, because normally sunspots will have this differentiation process like this, and that is certainly unfolding. The cores are moving apart, but you have these smaller intermediate cores still pushing up in between the two, adding complexity to the overall magnetic field picture there, and that is a very important component as to whether something like this is going to flare. So you have the magnetic field dynamics, they also have the electric circuit dynamics, and what's indicated also with sunspots is that when you have disturbances to the electric circuit locally in that area, that can cause these sort of solar flares. So you have these plasma double membranes or these double layers, and basically what a double layer is a very high voltage gradient. So you have one very high voltage potential here, another very low. In between, you have this rapid change in the electric field that accelerates particles. And what happens is the flow of energy going through that double layer sometimes can cause it to destabilize a little bit, causing this sort of outburst. And so you can get that cyclically sometimes. We often see that. We've been seeing that a lot with this solar cycle. You see it with every solar cycle. But you'll see like a big flare and then a lot of other flares popping off from that sunspot group on the tail end going down. That's that reoccurring double layer explosion. So what we see here is that a lot of energy is pushing out from the sun. The magnetic field is getting stronger and stronger as these cores become more dense. It's still staying fairly compact. I would not be surprised if we go back into M-class flare territory in the next few days. Like it could happen basically at any point now. We could start seeing M-class flares from that. We haven't had a good M-class flare in a long time. So, and in general, the Earth is really quite volatile right now because of this magnitude 8.8 quake that we had. So there's energy volatility across the Earth inherently because of that massive release of energy. We'll talk about that. And also perhaps this 8.8 portal is indicating that something else may be coming soon too. It's a possibility. Of course, there's always going to be new earthquakes, big earthquakes, small earthquakes. So we'll just explore kind of what some of the new trends seem to be. I do think, though, that was probably the biggest earthquake that we'll have for a while, but who knows? It's hard to say. Here we have our solar flux. And this over the past month, actually I think it goes further back than that. No, a little bit further back. This is going back to June, okay? And so this is June 21st right here, going up till the end of July. And solar flux has been declining now for a while. The peak of solar activity that we had was back in August of 2024. Things have kind of been on decline since then. But notice how we finally bumped up and stayed elevated effectively. And this is right around the middle of July. So our solar flux unit values here for 2800 megahertz. This is a 2.8 gigahertz wave, 10.7 centimeter wavelength. It was hovering around, let's say 120. If you take the average kind of in between here, right? Let's say it's 120 SFUs. Now we're up to about 150 if we average this out, taking this into account. About 150. So that's a good bump. It's not tremendously high or elevated. That'd be like 200 plus or even 300 plus. But we've definitely seen a shift in solar flux going from these lower values to these higher values, indicating a deeper change in the solar energy output that's active at this moment in time. Now, before I get too much further, let's look at these planetary resonances, because this is honestly the biggest thing that's happening right now and will be active for about 2 more weeks. But really the 8th and the 9th is the day. We just had Mercury Cazimi. So let's go back to today and let's check that out. Here we have the Earth, we have the Sun, there's Mercury. So it just performed an inferior conjunction. Mercury, of course, moves very fast in its orbit. So you see it moving there. When it's in this position, though, it looks like it's moving retrograde in motion from Earth. But it's, in fact, still, of course, moving the same in its orbit. But because of the dynamics, it shows up moving retrograde, and then it gets blotted out by the Sun because it's moving from the Sun. So if you look up right now at the Sun, you're effectively looking at Mercury, and it's soon now going to appear in the, I think it's going to appear in what, the morning sky. So along with Venus, who's also in that position. So we see it moving ahead here, and this is on the 8th of August I've set. Notice how there's a curve between the two like that. And that's the way the magnetic field of the Sun actually spirals out. It's called a Parker spiral. So on the 8th, the day that we have this big alignment, which if I just quickly go like this, you can see right here with Mars, Earth, Saturn, Neptune. We'll talk about Uranus and Pluto too. On the day that we have that big alignment, we have Mercury embedded in the solar wind in such a way that is naturally connected to the Earth magnetically. That's important. Then if we go and look at our benefics here, Venus and Jupiter, they are not exactly conjunct, but they will be soon. We see that alignment between Venus and Jupiter. Venus being the most massive planet besides the Earth in the inner solar system, Jupiter being the biggest planet in the solar system and also the most the closest gas giant to us. So that is a significant gravity vector. Do not underestimate that. Now that will go exact around the 11th of August, but you notice that on this critical day, 8-8 and then also 8-9, that is when that's basically in effect. It's nearly a perfect alignment already, showing multiple things stacking together. And then we also here, if we look right around the 8th of August, we see our moon here, and that on the 8th or the 9th, depending on where you are, is our full moon. So that's also another energy spike. So you have more light being reflected off the moon into the Earth system that guides circadian rhythms for not just us, but a lot of different life forms, mollusks and birds and plants and more, right? The 28-day lunar cycle is incredibly important as it relates to the natural flow of energy here on our planet. So we have that full moon on the 8th to the 9th, and we have this alignment with Jupiter and Venus occurring on the 11th, but basically in effect on the 8th to the 9th. We have Mercury embedded in the solar wind that's going to flow by the Earth on the 8th to the 9th. And then we have our legendary planetary resonances right here. this is all within a 1 degree orb. There's 360 degrees. If you take a circle and slice it, this is all within 1 degree orb. Here we have Mars, Earth, Saturn, Neptune. Very, very powerful. They are not exactly conjunct, but nearly so. That will happen in February of 2026. So some of these themes that are unfolding at this moment in time are going to have their more finalized conclusion, climax, you could say, early in 2026. Keep that in mind. So pay attention to what's happening now, what's been happening in July, even what's been happening going back to like March, April, May, and kind of take that forward, iterate forward a little bit, and you may get a better sense of what's coming. But we have this very powerful planetary resonance because as you can see here, if I zoom out, get this set up for you, again, Mars, Earth, Saturn, Neptune, look at how Uranus and Pluto are in this harmonic configuration here. And so this is a trine between Uranus and Pluto, and this is their opening trine after their historic conjunction in 1965. And during that conjunction in 1965, we had Neptune in the same position with Pluto. So this is also a opening sextile in between Pluto and Neptune, based off of their last conjunction at the very end of the 19th century. So Uranus has moved forward because it's much faster moving than Neptune. It's now its opening trine. Pluto and Neptune are back in their opening sextile, and now this is also a sextile between Neptune and Uranus. So that sequence culminated, that conjunction, in 1993. So we're taking the energy going back to like 1892 and 1893, I believe, with the Pluto-Neptune cycle, and then also 1965 and 1993, combining all of them together with this configuration, adding Saturn into the mix, and then energizing it all with Mars. And so this is a very, very powerful planetary resonance. Honestly, it is a historic configuration. This is technically a kite configuration with Mars, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto. But then if you look at it, we also have this near conjunction with Jupiter and Venus, and also it's on the full moon. So, and then Mercury in that space weather connection. So if you just look at a chart, you may think Mercury is not really doing much, but if you look at it from a space weather perspective, Mercury is going to be feeding Earth some energy from the sun more directly. So this is very, very significant. Can't understate that enough. And one of the interesting archetypes that you could explore here is that you have the Earth caught in the middle of this whole configuration. Uranus is radical change, connected to electricity, earthquakes. Pluto is connected to deep transformation, the underworld, the underbelly, power. So you combine those two together, that's pretty powerful right off the bat. Then you have Saturn there, representative of, like in many ways, the solid Earth, the material realm, 3D, the crust, geology, Neptune, lord of the oceans. So the oceans also, though, are kind of liminal spaces, the astral realm, and more. All this coming together, and then you have Mars is, you could consider like the match that gets lit, the spark that really gets that fire going. It sets the gasoline aflame. But there is overall a benefic energy to this because we see this conjunction here between Venus and Jupiter. This is occurring in Jupiter's exaltation, if you go by Western tropical. And then also this configuration here, Uranus and Pluto, is a trine, which is of the nature of Jupiter, so that's a harmonic. And then also these sextiles here are the nature of Venus, which is a harmonic. So we do have those configurations pretty nice, but I'd say the most maybe potent configuration is this Mars opposite Saturn, which is the midway point between the Mars-Saturn cycle. And that kicked off back in, what was it, 2022? No, it's not 2022. Either way, I mean, I think that was April of last year. So, because that's like about 2-year cycle. So we do have that tense aspect there. And so the big recommendation I could have for you, depending on how this is set up in your chart, is to look to integrate these two energies together to their highest expression, because just because it's an opposition does not mean that it has to be a bad thing. I've worked with many oppositions before in my life that actually worked out beautifully. You have to kind of find that bridge in between them, walk that narrow path. At least it's been narrow in my experience, but if you can do that successfully, you equalize the energy and bring in a coherence, and some amazing things can happen. So this is a deeply transformational planetary alignment and resonance sequence, you could say, that we have unfolding at the beginning of August, right around the Lionsgate portal, 8/8/2025. And just to kind of go a little further, it's interesting that this is all happening around 8/8, and well, we had this magnitude 8.88 earthquake there, Kamchatka, the megaquake that we've been talking about, forecasted out on this channel pretty reasonably, and that is now progressing forward. So an interesting pattern here, and we're just sharing an interesting pattern here, is that we had this magnitude 8.8 earthquake, and we'll talk about the magnitude of this earthquake next, okay? But then we see the aftershock sequence. And so you see these aftershocks propagating down, some of the higher ones too. This is a 6.0 here, here's a 6.2. This is all USGS data. But what happens when you get a really powerful earthquake is that you, A, relieve stress right in that immediate spot. You also relieve stress in earthquake shadow zones, which are right nearby. And so a clear example of that is this. This is relieving a lot of stress right now with all these aftershocks, and also the main shock sequence ruptured the fault from here to here, basically. So a lot of stress has been reduced on that fault, but then you also load stress onto other parts of the fault due to the release of that energy. And you also load stress onto other features outside of fault zones, right? So we have this shadow zone here, but look at what's outside the shadow zone. Oh, that's Japan. We've been talking about Japan a lot. So Japan actually now is not in a better position than it was before this. It was not was not in the magnitude 8.8 on Japan, but now these faults, which are locked and loaded in Japan, have a huge capability of big earthquakes, specifically this trough right here, the Nankai Trough, which is estimated to have a megaquake in the next 30 years, very high percentage, like 75–80%. And also the Ryukyu Trench, locked and loaded. This can have VEI-8 volcanic eruptions here, so Godzilla events, specifically from Kakai volcano right here. This is the entire caldera of Kakai volcano, blasted off 150 cubic kilometers of material or more about 7,300 years ago. And that pyroclastic flow went past Tokyo. Insane, absolutely massive volcanic seismic tsunami pyroclastic flow event. That's why I just call it a Godzilla event. This area now has been loaded with energy. So we have this historic planetary sequence on 8/8. We had a magnitude 8.8 earthquake there, right kind of at the beginning of this whole sequence unfolding, which leads me to believe that it was a little bit of a message, or kind of like a clue in, a synchronicity as it relates to this upcoming energy portal. And then also, if we go back in time, we see that on the last 8/8 portal, we actually had a magnitude 7.1 in Japan, in this area that a lot of people have been watching. So here we have that, and I can put this on satellite view for you guys. But here's the epicenter of that magnitude 7.1 on August 8th of 2024. And they get magnitude 7 earthquakes in this location. So this is not unheard of. And there were some casualties from this. And this is, again, if we're considering a magnitude 8 earthquake, this is only 1/30th the energy release of a magnitude 8. So just because there's been a magnitude 7 there does not mean that something bigger can't happen. And I'm not saying we're about to have a magnitude 8+ earthquake in Japan, but we have had energy loaded into this area. We know the potential of these zones. We've been watching them. It's very interesting. And we also have to take into context all the other activity we've seen on the Ring of Fire loading into Japan as well. So Japan is definitely a place to watch now, though it is not the only location. I have also identified a zone in California that I think is the most likely to rupture for the next big one. Does not mean that that will be the location of that. And I'm going to talk about this more over the next few weeks and months, I'm sure. But specifically, this portion right here, the San Andreas, I think is probably the next to go. So I'll talk about that more later and why I think that's the case. But was this earthquake in Russia actually a magnitude 8.8? Because there's a little bit of talk and chatter online from a variety of people as to it was a artificial earthquake, it was created, it was a thermonuclear explosion, it's a cover-up, there's all these different things out there. But thankfully we have multiple seismic networks that are global in scale, and some of them not global but still very well built out. And there's thousands of people working within these organizations and groups to collect this data, record it, analyze it, publish it, that I think that we can rule out effectively conspiracy theories, because there's just too many people. It just doesn't make sense. But here we have our quake data from volcano discovery for this magnitude 8.8. And so here's the USGS, and then we have some others. We're going to go through them, but just right from the beginning, I like to point out data for the same earthquake as reported by different agencies. There are some differences. USGS has it as an 8.8. Other groups have it as a lower magnitude. No one has it as a higher magnitude. But the key thing is here, the more agencies report about the same quake and post similar data, the more confidence you can have in that data. It normally takes up to a few hours until the earthquake parameters are calculated with near optimum precision. That is the case because you have to record that entire train of energy to really get a sense of the overall energy release. And so these seismic networks globally, they pick up that P wave pretty quick, which is that compressional wave. But there are differences between earthquakes in terms of the distribution of energy in the different seismic waveforms. This would be P waves, the compressional waves, S waves, the shear waves, and then the surface waves like the Rayleigh waves and the Love waves. And so until you get all that data, you are not going to have a clear indication as to what the magnitude of this earthquake is. And so you cannot look at the magnitude that is first posted in the first 2 minutes and take that as your gauge of what the magnitude is, that if they then change it later, this is now a conspiracy. That is not at all the case, and that is just really clearly you don't understand how these seismic monitoring networks work, and you don't understand seismic waves in general. So it takes some time to get the magnitude. Now here are the magnitudes that have been reported across these different agencies. 8.8 by the USGS, 8.79 by GFZ. This is the German Research Center for Geosciences. And in fact, they have that now as an 8.8. If you click through to the link, we'll see it's reported as an 8.8 right there. So that is the GFC Helmholtz Center for Geosciences. They do a lot of amazing work. Geoscience Australia, let's click that. Let's see what they say. Because they're fairly close to that quake location. And they have it as an 8.6 here on their magnitude calculations. So an 8.6 according to them. Let's go further down now. Now you'll notice this one here that says 7.3. This has not been analyzed by someone. So they just see this event was automatically detected and needs to be confirmed by someone. Hasn't been done. So I don't think you can take that seriously until they actually analyze the data. Right now that's just the auto magnitude and it's not accurate because the others have been analyzed and given the appropriate magnitude. We see INGV here. This is the Italian network. They have given it a 8.6, I believe, a magnitude 8.6. So we see it all clustering around 8.8 to 8.6. And if we go down, this is where things get a little interesting. We have our Russian network. And I actually have this map already loaded up. So it's right here. And so this is the Russian Academy. And you would think that they would be maybe the most accurate on the earthquake considering it happened on Russian soil effectively. And so this is very interesting. And I don't really know what to think of this. But they have this pegged as a magnitude 7.5. But they also have quite a bit of differences amongst all the other reporting agencies. And you have to keep in mind that USGS has the largest global network. So they have this as a 7.5 right here. And this was at 23:24:49 Universal Time on the 29th. And then we see at 23:25:43 universal a 7.2. So they have that aftershock which occurred right after. USGS has it at 6.9. They put it as a 7.2. And then the USGS quake, the main one, 8.8, they have as a 7.5. So quite a bit different. And it is surprising. I wouldn't expect really there to be any significant tsunami from a 7.5 that would actually reach Hawaii and get picked up by tidal gauge buoys in the way that it did. Now, did we get a huge tsunami hit Hawaii? No, we did not. The similar earthquake that occurred in 1952, November 4th, magnitude 9, that did cause more damage, but that still wasn't that big of a tsunami in the grand scheme. And this was 0.2 magnitude weaker. And so, but a magnitude 7.5 wouldn't have created a tsunami at all. It'd be very unlikely to create a tsunami, especially at this depth of 44 kilometers, which is what they have it. USGS has at like 35 kilometers. So I think the fact that there was a tsunami that was picked up by these tidal buoys is indication that that magnitude is in that magnitude 8 range and probably closer to 8.6 to 8.8 and not 7.5. So I don't know what the deal is with the Russian data. I'm just showing you this. Make up your own mind, do your own research. But it is totally normal. Just as a geologist, geophysicist, it's actually, it's completely normal to take some time, a few hours to get the accurate magnitude because you simply need to record the data. It takes time for these seismic waves to propagate out. Right? We've seen that animation multiple times about the seismic waves propagating out. You have to measure the P wave, the S wave, and the surface wave to get a sense of the overall energy release. Because there can be variations between those different waveforms between earthquakes. So you need that complete picture. And you can't do that instantaneously. So I wanted to just like make a point of that. But I do find it odd that we had this 8.8 earthquake and we had this 8.8 portal coming up. We now see that Japan is more in a seismic zone, like more seismic stress as a result because of that earthquake. And on the last 8.8 portal, we did have this magnitude 7.1 right in this location that we've been watching. So what does that mean? I don't know, but it's definitely some sort of pattern that I wanted to present to you just because I think it is interesting. Now, if we talk about our sun really quick in this increasing solar activity, here we see our sunspots for July. And so we see that we had this drop there below 100, peak up to about 200, and then we've basically stabilized right around 140, and the monthly count came in at 120, a little bit over 120. So here we can see that with our international sunspot number. And this is from the Royal Observatory of Belgium. Here's solar minimum 2020. We see this going up. This is our ascending phase. And right about here is where we enter into solar maximum. So that is the end of 2024. Here we have August 2024. That peak was about 216 sunspots. We see this big drop in May. That was precipitous. And then we see now things have been recovering. This latest value, that's 100, 110, 120. So maybe like 122, 123 there. I could get the actual value if I pull up their data spreadsheet, but this is sufficient for our purposes right now. So we are seeing this rebound in activity. The question is it going to roll over like this, or is it actually going to be a significant second peak that then we descend down from? I'm a little inclined to believe it's going to be the second peak. I think that we're going to see increasing activity going all the way through the end of the year. And then I think starting in January and February of next year, when Saturn and Neptune both get close together again and move into Aries, Western Tropical, I think that's when we're going to see the kind of things get tamped down again. Because that's what we saw when Saturn, which is in its fall in Aries, the moment Saturn moved in is when we saw this massive drop, like it was a blanket over the fire. And now it's been kind of figuring out how to still express itself. But when they move out, I think we're going to see one big push of solar energy, and then I think things will finally enter kind of into the descending phase. But it takes some time. Regardless, it's going to take some time to round this out and to perform that 12-year solar cycle. But that's just kind of my advanced forecasting for that. Take it for what it's worth. On one source, there are many out there. And if we look at our far side of the sun, you'll see that we do have some big sunspots that are getting closer now to the limb where they'll start to rotate in. So this is exactly on the far side at this moment in time. We see this one right there on the meridian. though this is for the 29th of July at 0 or 40 minutes in the 0040 a.m. Universal Time. So in fact, we're ready now, 30th, 31st, August 1st. This is actually a lot closer now to the limb than this is showing. I don't know why this intensity gram that they have is so out of date, but this is the best that we have. So this is actually shifted over about here or so. So we have some sunspots rotating in very soon from the far side, which is quite significant. And I also want to show you our 211 angstrom view of the sun, because we do have a coronal hole that's on the sun right now. And we've also had some plasma filaments blast off. We can look at that as well. But let's check this out. And here we see our sun in 211 angstroms. It allows us to see the solar corona very nicely, and therefore these gaps, these holes in the solar corona where there's very low plasma density, low temperature, and the magnetic field extends out into space. So this is not the biggest coronal hole, but it's right there in that transequatorial region. This one kind of collapsed. It was growing as it got to here, and then it kind of collapsed. So forecasters were expecting there to be some enhancement due to that high-speed stream, but ultimately did not materialize. But that was on the forecast for a while. We'll see if it can kind of regrow again. I wouldn't be surprised if it was just like a temporary reduction, but we'll see. This one though seems to be stable and actually kind of growing in the past few days. So once it gets there geoeffective, we are going to get a little burst of high-speed solar wind as a result. So that will be interesting. See how it's been growing since the 30th of July. So that is right in that transequatorial region, and we see our new sunspot group just off to the west of its solar coordinate system. And so the more active that gets, the more it's going to brush up, and the bigger it gets, the more it's going to push up against that open magnetic field configuration. And therefore, this is likely going to become more unstable as it gets bigger. So that's also something to watch. So this is a very interesting dynamic that we have right now. And we could even get this guy blasting off a lot of solar flares as we're in that high-speed stream. Those that come more from the limb, this would cause radio blackouts, very unlikely to trigger a solar storm impact in the few days that follow from, let's say, a coronal mass ejection. But we could get peppered with a lot of very fast impacts of high-frequency light. So these photons, 8.3 minutes after they get emitted from the sun, they hit the Earth. But from the light photon perspective, it's actually instantaneous. Because if they're traveling at the speed of light, relativity, time is effectively null. So there is that interesting kind of metaphysical perspective to keep in mind, that from the light perspective, everything's linked together instantly in time, which is very interesting. But that is something to be aware of. And if we go back to our 304 angstrom view, I want to show you this plasma filament that blasted off. I have not done a solar update for a few days because there's been so much activity elsewhere and it hasn't really been needed. So now though, I feel like things are increasing. We're back to these solar updates being important. And so I'm back with more. Let's actually punch this all the way in so you can see this really nicely. And we're gonna watch right up here. So watch this guy. Big plasma filament launched there. And that is not Earth directed, though maybe a little bit brushes by us in the next day or two. It's hard to say. But that was a big plasma filament launch. And there are plenty of other plasma filaments on the sun too. So at any point, some of these could destabilize and perhaps increase the volatility and turbulence of the solar wind. That is very possible. And in fact, the solar wind's kind of been turbulent. It hasn't been like exceptionally bizarre or anything like that, but in general, I would say it's been turbulent, and it's just kind of now entering out of that turbulence. And we can see that by looking at our 3-day view. So here's our 3-day view of the solar wind. Measure 1% of the distance from the Earth to the sun. And up top, we see our interplanetary magnetic field. We see it went up to 13 nanotesla. So that's more than 2 times over normal. Normal's 5. Now, we did get back to that right around here. If I step over, we see it's like 6 and 7 nanotesla. So we haven't been this turbulence forever, but we definitely had elevated interplanetary magnetic field strength, and we just in general had some changes to the plasma density and the velocity. Here's the density, here's the velocity. Just some changes. Nothing really, definitely nothing to make a video on by itself. That would be too much. But definitely a bit of turbulence. So not the strongest turbulence, but some turbulence. You see our temperature changes here. The geomagnetic field has been relatively quiet. We've not been in a geomagnetic storm, but these earthquakes have been quite significant just in terms of the energy release. Constant aftershocks, tons of magnitude 5s, magnitude 6s, and we're likely to see that increase for the rest of October. I think we're going to see in general elevated magnitude 6 activity for, or not October, sorry. I think we're going to see elevated magnitude 6 activity for August for this month, just in general because of that magnitude 8.8, these planetary resonances, and more. And before we get to our I Ching reading to kind of get a sense of what this 8.8 portal can mean, let's look at our chronograph and see this Mercury Cazimi ourselves. And so we can do that here, and we will see, maybe you can find Mercury yourself, but there it is right there, retrograde, performing its inferior conjunction to the Sun yesterday, and we see that right there, and now it's moving forward. So Mercury is going to be in this chronograph view for probably about another week or so, maybe a little bit less, right around there. And again, that takes us through that 8.8 portal. So again, that configuration of the solar wind, it's going to be sweeping by Mercury before it then connects to the Earth. So this is very interesting. It's not like it never happens. It happens quite frequently because Mercury rotates around the Sun very fast, but these do seem to be important as it relates to space weather dynamics and more. So that is the current state of affairs as it relates to Earth geophysics, space weather, and more. Let us get a sense of what may be coming by examining the just the oracles. Let's do an I Ching reading. So let me get set up for that. And if you're new here, if you're jumping on the live stream, hello, welcome. I'm your host, Stefan Burns, geophysicist, space weatherman, cosmic weatherman, curious human, all those things and more. Welcome. And just getting a nice graphic up that won't be flashing too much. Some of these graphics from the SDO right now are very, very active because the cameras, the Earth is passing in front of the camera, so they have to block that out. It's just a little too jittery for sensitive viewers. So let's do our I Ching reading. And if you're unaware, I Ching is an ancient divination method by the Chinese, and actually have it right here. So this is the website that I use, and they just have all the different hexagrams here, and it's called a hexagram because it's 6 lines. You generate these yin and yang lines, and you can flip coins to do that. And so when you have a heads, that's a yang, that's a yang line. If you have a tails, that's a yin line. But you need 2 heads to create a yang line and like 1 tails, or 3 heads will create a yang line, but it'll also then change on you. And then if you get 2 tails, a predominance of tails, then you'll get a yin line. If you get 3 tails, that's a changing line. So you can actually generate 2 different hexagrams, which tells a story. And there's it's written like 2,000 plus years ago, even perhaps further back. So it's really interesting. I find it very insightful. Every time I do it, I find the I Ching very insightful. So this is what I like to do it, and I like how it's written out in plain spoken English. I mean, it's actually written out in Chinese and then translated, but it's a good method. And we've done it before on the channel, and it's proven fairly accurate before. So we're gonna basically throw these coins 6 times and see what sort of reading that we get. And we have 2 heads and a tails. So that's our yang line at the beginning. So yang line. I wish I had a second camera here to show you, but you'll just have to trust me. We have 2 tails and a head, so we have a yin line now. So we have a yang and then a yin. So at least now they are in equal balance. And we have 3 tails, so that's a changing yin line. So that one will change to a yang line for our second hexagram results. If you don't really understand what I'm saying, that's fine. We're going to actually read through what this means. what it indicates. You have a yang line, 2 heads and a tails. My pen is dying in terms of ink. I may need to get my other pen. And the next one, what does this 8-8 portal mean for us? That's the question. We have 2 tails and a heads. What does this 8-8 portal mean for us? Find out. Well, at least find out what Spirit wants to say. And we have a yin line. Okay, so a lot of yin energy in this. 2 yang lines, 4 yin lines, 1 yin line changes though, so there is a balance of yin and yang in the end. And to find the hexagram that this is, let me, I guess I'll probably actually want this on this one there. It's probably the way to go. So we're looking for 2 yin up top and then a yang, and then 2 yin and a yang. So there's actually a nice harmony to this. This will be interesting to see which one this is. 2 yin and a yang, 2 yin and a yang, okay. Which means it's a repeating trigram because they are given certain elemental characteristics too. So we have 2 of the same element, though which element it is, I'm not exactly sure. Find out. Arousing. Number 51, shock and thunder. It must be 2 thunder trigrams. All right. Yeah, thunder over thunder, okay. Ura. This is thunder over thunder. Thunder was the name of my aunt's dog. It's a wonderful dog. So we'll go back to this. The changing one is a yang line on the bottom, then a yin line, and then a yang line, and then it's the same situation of a yang line, yin, yin. So that's thunder over, I'm not sure what that other element is, but let's find out. We'll go back to number 51. We know what it is. It's going to change to, this is the hardest part, is always finding it. Finding your I Ching reading is always the hardest. I think it's this one though, abundance. Let's check. That's the one, number 55. Ooh, I like this, number 55. If you go from thunder and thunder to abundance. Okay. So let's go back to our main one. And number 51 to number 55. Okay, shock, awe, thunder, surprising events, very Uranian. This is very Uranian right from the get-go. Shock brings success. Shock comes, uh-oh, laughing words, haha. The shock terrifies for 100 miles. And he does not let the sacrificial spoon, and he does not let fall the sacrificial spoon and chalice. It's interesting, okay. And they have like interpretations of this. This is just the original text, translated from Chinese. The image. Thunder repeated, the image of shock. Thus in fear and trembling, the superior man sets his life in order and examines himself. So this is definitely indicating that something big is coming. Some sort of shock and awe event. Wow. Okay. The hexagram represents the eldest son who seizes rule with energy and power. A yang line develops below 2 yin lines and presses upward forcibly. This movement is so violent that it arouses terror. It is symbolized by thunder, which bursts forth from the earth and by its shock causes fear and trembling. It's interesting. It's almost making me think of like plasma coming out of the earth like this, which is what you get during powerful earthquakes. So you literally get this expulsion of plasma that shoots upwards. These ionospheric changes then occur. You get earthquake lights. It's a massive electromagnetic pulse and discharge. The judgment, the shock that comes from the manifestation of God within the depths of the earth makes man afraid. So again, the shock that comes from the manifestation of God within the depths of the earth makes man afraid, but this fear of God is good, for joy and merriment can follow upon it. And we have abundance following, number 55. So that's interesting. When a man has learned within his heart what fear and trembling mean, he is safeguarded against any terror produced by outside influences. Let the thunder roll and spread terror 100 miles around. He remains so composed and reverent in spirit that the sacrificial rite is not interrupted. So that's what that means. Thus is the spirit that must animate leaders and rulers of men a profound inner seriousness from which all terrors glance off harmlessly. I love that. I think that's great. When a man has learned within his heart what fear and trembling mean, he is now protected and safeguarded and immune against any terror produced by outside influences. So the thunder can roll, the shock, the bang can happen, the explosion, the earthquake, whatever it is, the storm can spread across the world, influencing, everyone and cultivating terror. But in those who haven't realized this inner knowing and peace, but this person who we look up to be, they are so composed that even in the middle of a ritual, they're completely unfazed. And then the image, the shock of continuing thunder brings fear and trembling. The superior man is always filled with reverence at the manifestation of God, no matter how it appears, right? It could be a massive shock and bang. That is still God. That's still the manifestation of God, even if it is terrifying. He sets his life in order and searches his heart lest it harbor any secret opposition to the will of God. Thus, reverence is the foundation of true culture. I love that too. Yeah. Are you really in alignment with God? You may say you are, but when something like this rolls around, are you still actually in alignment and accepting and even eager to see the expression of God to its fullest extent? Because you have to remember, this translates to abundance, number 55. And this is changing line number 3. So we can go up and read what it says for number 3 to give us more context. Third line marked means shock comes and makes one distraught. If shock spurs to action, one remains free of misfortune. So whatever this is doing, this Lionsgate portal, this planetary alignment, maybe something from the sun, we're getting increased solar flux, we'll see. Maybe some sort of Earth event. This is very resonant with there being perhaps some second large Earth event coming. Who knows? That shock, if it spurs you into action, that is the way forward. So you can't just sit there in shock and stay in shock and actually be complacent. This is your opportunity and moment to proceed forward. And we consider the historic planetary resonances are all about a burst of new creativity and imagination, inspiration, changing the world and shaping it into what you want to see in a positive way for everybody, then this is speaking to that there's no better time than now. The best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. Second best time is right now. So you have to get started with this. And it looks like there's going to be some sort of shock event, which is going to propel people to do something like that, to make some changes in their life collectively or more around this 8-8 portal. And then here, the third line from the bottom marked, there are 3 kinds of shock: the shock of heaven, which is thunder, the shock of fate, and finally the shock of the heart. The present hexagram refers less to inner shock than to the shock of fate. In such times of shock, presence of mind is all too easily lost. The individual overlooks all opportunities for action and mutely lets fate take its course. But if he allows a shock of fate to induce movement within his mind, let these reverberations instill new vitality within you, he will overcome these external blows with little effort. So cultivate that inner awareness, that inner temple of calm, and then when these shock waves come in, use that energy to fuel whatever it is that your heart desires and what is to the benefit of all. Because that's kind of the call in my mind and in my heart. This is what I feel, that's the call of God right now, is for us to finally work together cooperatively. We've been at each other's throats for too long. Something I wrote down yesterday is that it's not that, and right now there's so much polarization, okay? So it's not that one side is right, it's that both sides are wrong. And the only way through this mess with both sides being wrong is actually go orthogonal. That's what I believe right now. So let's check out number 55. abundance, because it looks like if you follow this impulse, that a lot of good stuff is coming your way. We have thunder over flames. That's flame. Okay. And we're about to do a cosmic connection meditation. If you're new here, if you're joining in just now, we're about to play the solar plexus singing bowl to help integrate some of these energies that we've been discussing, and now a little bit of this insight that we've been given to help cleanse and purify this internal space within us individually and collectively. And since we don't have changing lines, we can just read the judgment in the image. So judgment, abundance has success. The king attains abundance. Be not sad, be like the sun at midday. The image, both thunder and lightning come the image of abundance. Thus the superior man decides lawsuits and carries out punishments. It is not given to every mortal to bring about a time of outstanding greatness abundance. Only a born ruler of men is able to do it, because his will is directed to what is great. Such a time of abundance is usually brief. Therefore a sage might well feel sad in view of the decline that must follow, but such sadness does not befit him. Only a man who is inwardly free of sorrow and care can lead in a time of abundance. He must be like the sun at midday, illuminating and gladdening everything under heaven. Oh, and what we're talking about, this increase in solar energy and flux right now, solar maximum. You know, it's funny how all this stuff works out. We have a synchronicity right here. The image, this hexagram has a certain connection to Shin Ho, biting through, in which thunder and lightning similarly appear together, but in reverse order. In that hexagram, laws are laid down. Here they are applied and enforced. Clarity within makes it possible to investigate the facts exactly, and shock without ensures a strict and precise carrying out of punishments. So this, I think, we have a shock coming up. What exactly that means, I don't know. Is it a geologic shock? Is it a solar shock? Is it a societal shock? Is it a some sort of shock of war maybe? I don't know. Is it a shock for you individually? All of us kind of have our own individual shock. Something here. It's very resonant though with the planetary resonances that we discussed. Very resonant with that. Because again, right, this alignment there, very much connected to that. So, yeah, very interesting stuff with this I Ching. I think it's a good time, good opportunity now to integrate some of these energies. A big one, we just had a big one. I mean, it's possible that we have a second big one. It's not unheard of to have two big magnitude 8 plus earthquakes in fairly close time relation to each other. But it's not the most common thing. But if there was ever going to be a year for that to occur, it would be 2025 with these planetary resonances that we have. So it's possible. It's possible that we get a second big earthquake. We often see that sequence of a big earthquake triggering another big earthquake, though of a lesser magnitude. So if this was an 8.8, let's say in Russia, then I wouldn't be surprised if Japan had a high magnitude 7 because of all that new energy that came in. Like that could be a possibility, or maybe somewhere else on the globe. So we could be looking at that. We could be looking at another magnitude 8. I'm not so sure how likely that is, but it's definitely possible. 2021 had 3 magnitude 8.8 or magnitude 8 plus earthquakes. So, you know, we've had one this year. Typically you get one per year, but we've been overdue for 4 years. We finally got our first one. We could get some more in 2025. Maybe we have one coming up for this upcoming 8.8 portal in this 8.9 planetary alignment, full moon, all that stuff. I think we got something coming. If you thought that this was the big thing, maybe it's not the biggest thing. Like maybe there's bigger stuff coming. Hard to say. What about magnitude 9? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. All you can do is find peace within yourself. And that's what we're going to do right now collectively. Do a cosmic connection meditation. I would now invite you to take a comfortable position. Just feel your presence. And your awareness can go within to your heart space. You could stay with your body. You can extend out to your biofield. Maybe even create a pulse of awareness that travels from your heart space out to your biofield and through and back, forth with your breathing. As you breathe in, your awareness expands. As you breathe out, your awareness crystallizes to the center. Start to cultivate that. Start to visualize that solar energy within you in that crystallization nexus, a very bright glowing orb, white, yellow, even a flame flickering, a plasma orb, fueling everything. Your body, your mind, your spirit. And this pulsating orb of solar energy is resonant with the sun as well. So the two are rhythmically connected together in resonance. And so while the body may be earthly, right, the flesh and physicality of our body may be of the earth, there is a more rarefied plasma body that is in resonance with the sun and with the cosmos overall. And it's from that consciousness and that energy field that we animate our body to embark upon new missions and journeys and discoveries. So cultivate that inner field. Find peace within it. And any shock waves that may come in can be utilized to their highest expression to animate your avatar to embark upon new missions, endeavors, dreams, inspirations. And now I want you to expand that visualization where you see your glowing solar energy orb pulsing within your body. You see the sun, so much more massive, made up of a uncountable, infinite number of consciousnesses, also pulsing rhythmically. And then notice all the other solar energy orbs of people and life around you. All of them in resonance and coherence, in varying degrees. If you shift that visualization where they're all rhythmically pulsing together, we create a very powerful, coherent resonance. There's very little energy attenuation. And so we can all pursue our unique soul purpose life missions. And the energy created at the collective scale simultaneously fuels everyone's individual expression of spirit and what we're meant to do on this planet, why we're here. Then as you embark upon that individual journey, it also then strengthens reciprocally that collective field because you find greater coherence within yourself, with your immediate surroundings, your community. And more. Feel the energy wash over you. (222 hertz). Make sure to give your thanks to the sun. And we now bring to a close this collective resonance with a newfound understanding of the trajectory that we are going together, humanity, this entire planet, all life, Earth, the sun, the solar system, even our nearby stars, the star systems around us, how we're traveling through the galactic energy field. All in resonance together, but still retaining our unique individual soul expression, dreams and aspirations, hopes, and more. So thank you all so much for joining today. And I'm wishing all of you well, of course. So please take care of yourselves. Rest as needed. We are in Mercury retrograde, a beautiful time to rest more. You may be like, why do I need to rest now? We don't know what's coming. So it may be good to be rested before maybe something big happens. Some shock, that's what the I Ching is suggesting. Again, number 51, arousing. Number 55, abundance is what it changes to. I'll put a link to that webpage in the video description. Sending you lots of love and light. Please take care of yourselves. I'll see you all in the next video. Thank you so much. Namaste.